Hello and welcome to Sophie & Co. I'm Sophie Shepard-Natze. The US military is relying more and more on drone warfare. But could this modern weapon be doing more harm than good? Bryant, a former drone operator in the US military, is with me today to share his experience.
Modern warfare can be fought in mountain passes or down narrow urban streets. But aircraft firing missiles over Afghanistan can now be guided remotely from a base in Nevada, in a dark room lit by computer screens, not by a pilot navigating the skies. What plays on the mind of a drone operator before he hits the button? Is it easier to fight an enemy thousands of miles away instead of face to face? And should those who engage in war be distanced from its dangers and consequences?
Bryant, who served in the US Air Force as a drone operator. Welcome to our show. It's really great to have you with us, Brendan. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Brendan, both Obama and Trump have embraced drone warfare, with strikes in Somalia and Yemen tripling in number during Trump's first year in office. But the situation in these countries, Afghanistan a prime example, never seems to improve. Can drones really change the course of a campaign?
No, drones definitely cannot change the course of anything, especially if they're being misused as a tool. And that's simply all that they are. And if we take away our ability to interact as human beings with one another, we're never going to solve this crisis.
Now, during your time in the US Air Force, drones were tested as a new form of warfare. Now, even Islamic State have been using them in Iraq and Syria to devastating effect. Do drones have the potential to be as commonplace as warplanes and helicopters, and will everyone embrace them at some point?
As this technology gets easier to manufacture, you're going to see a lot more people utilizing it. You can go to a Best Buy in America and buy a quadcopter drone for less than $1,000. And you can watch YouTube videos of people putting stuff on these drones to make them even deadlier. So, you know, it really just takes a more moral and righteous and virtuous person to utilize this technology properly, but obviously what we've been seeing is that none of these people who are using these things in warfare understand what virtues or morals actually are.
Are we gonna have like a drone-on-drone combat from now on? Is this how war is gonna look like in the future?
Well, if you look at what's happening with Japan and China, they're already utilizing this technology to fight over resources in the ocean. So it's not unheard of that we are going to have cowards fighting cowards behind computer screens.
Now, the biggest plus for using drones is that it saves American lives. Nobody's put in a firing line. So how can the technology be bad? I mean, your side suffers no losses.
That's actually the thing about warfare that people need to understand, is that there is a price to pay when going to war. And if we take the human component out of it, then there's no actual price. And then we just continue to the cycle. It's an endless cycle. And there needs to be men and women who train with honor and integrity, who are willing to go onto the battlefield and interact with humans, because that's actually how battles are prevented. Usually we had people posturing one another. Back in World War II, people didn't fire to kill one another, only 20% people did. Today, in today's conflict, we have a 95% fire and kill rate, and we wonder why we have people with psychological and mental problems that are coming back from home, or from war to home, and killing themselves. So this is just gonna make it even worse.
Now, you have described the use of drones as a cowardly action. I get the view distant warfare as dishonorable.
Correct.
But you can hardly describe homemade IEDs, suicide attacks, or children being recruited to carry them out honorable, right? Wouldn't you back drones knowing your enemy would resort to anything to inflict damage or kill your soldiers?
Just because our enemy does something dishonorable doesn't mean that we need to continue being dishonorable ourselves. This is actually why codes of conduct and codes of honor were required for warriors back in ancient days. It wasn't so our enemies could know exactly what we were doing, but so that we had a structure and boundaries in what we were going to do. Because wars aren't fought against one another, they're fought for the people. And if you can set an example for the people as being the better and nobler and more honorable person, people are going to side with you. And then the enemy will lose their power. And that's really what it comes down to. You take away their ability to recruit. Give the people who are suffering under these conflicts the ability to recover, to feel safe. That's the idea to win this war, not creating better weapons to kill one another.
Yeah, but the point is, there have always been wars and there will be wars, and there's nothing we can do about it, really. So is winning a war less important than being honorable?
That is a poor excuse. That is a poor excuse. Look at the leadership that we have today. Trump is a idiot, and every single person of his administration idiots. And all they ever do is just sit there and posture and saying that we need to go to war and we need to go to war. Obama did the same thing. And we need people who are actual decent human beings saying enough is enough. We have the ability to stop this. We are conscious, living human beings. We're not animals. We need to stop acting like animals and actually be human with one another.
I salute you on that statement, and I wish you ran for president one day. I want to go back to how you become a drone operator. I'm just interested in the whole process. What's the process for becoming one? What kind of people does this role attract? Or are soldiers just told they're being transferred?
Well, when I was in the service, I was just transferred because of my aptitude scores. Nowadays, they're, well, let's just take a look at the people that I worked with. Many of them were the lowest common denominator. When the U.S. military needed people to fill these positions, they just asked a bunch of different careers to send us people. And so the other careers sent us the creme de la mediocrity, if you will. The worst of the worst, people who were rejected from other career fields because they couldn't function in leadership positions. Pilots were moved into drones because they were medically unfit to fly their aircraft. They either couldn't fail, or they couldn't be aircraft commanders or squadron leaders, so they were shoved into the program. There were very few people that actually volunteered to be in this program that were of any actual worth as human beings. So this type of society, I guess, within the military culture is sick and degraded, and you know, they're actually looked down upon by aircraft, people who actually fly aircraft, because we're flying remotely. They get to wear flight suits. It's a mess. The whole thing's a mess.
What is the training
like? They're just putting
like?
People in there to fill positions because they don't need qualification. It's like 3 months.
Yeah,
it's
do
like
drone operators get taught just to kill, or are they supposed to be able to tell when to pull the trigger and when to stay stealth?
Oh, no, okay, so we're told that, you know, we get the time to look at our target to make the discernment of whether we get to kill him or not. But the reality is that if you refuse to pull the trigger, they're just going to take someone out of the seat and put someone in the seat that's going to pull it for them anyway. And how the training works is we're flying over the Nevada desert and we're looking at rocks, and then they're saying, hey, we're going to pretend this rock over here is an enemy. Shine your laser at this enemy. Okay, 3, 2, 1, rifle. 16 seconds time of flight. All right, missile splashes. Enemies killed. You just won the war on terror. Let's pack up and go home. It's just a bunch of imagination that doesn't actually accomplish anything other than to teach people basic toddler skills of hand-eye coordination.
Now, I've read that the operators' schedules are pretty tough and that most of the time you just spend hours looking at nothing. Now, with the messed up sleep cycles and boredom, how sharp are the operators when the time actually comes to make a crucial decision?
Well, this is kind of where the people that I used to work with are pissed off at me because I exposed the mental difficulties that we were having. You know, we flew in my squadron 11.5-hour days because we couldn't fly longer than the required crew rest according to Air Force regulations. And in a sense, many of us broke crew rest because we had to do office work, or even some of us couldn't sleep. I was one of those people that couldn't sleep, so I really stopped sleeping. I did this thing called the Easy Man sleep schedule, where you sleep every 20 minutes for every 4 hours for 20 minutes, and really screwed me up physically I was tired all the time. I was exhausted. We had people drinking, and we had this one guy who got into a car accident and rolled his vehicle after drinking, and he used the excuse that he was just tired from work, and he got away with it. It's just a mess. Like people in this world are incredibly messed up, and they refuse to look at themselves and the problems that are going on with them and addressing them.
And then there is, of course, the million-dollar question. I mean, you have first-hand experience of directing warheads to the desired objectives. Tell me this, are drone strikes really that precise and surgical?
Well, if you're looking at accuracy of where the missile can hit, then yes. If you're looking at the intelligence behind it and how they discern what information that we're given and what targets are correct, then no. In fact, this is what we call secret compartmentalized information. The three-letter agencies that are working as the customer behind the scenes don't really give the people that swing the metaphorical sword the information, all the information. So they tell us where to swing the sword, but when things go wrong and the wrong people are killed, we're the ones that get blamed because they had all the intel. And,
so, Brandon...
It's just a big blame game.
Brandon, well, where does a drone operator's intel come from? Who is giving you the instruction? How can soldiers even be sure the information is on point? I mean, does everybody ever question it?
No, well, people don't question it because that's why it's compartmentalized. There's all sorts of different pieces of the puzzle, and none of the pieces are actually talking to one another except for what's required. Knowledge is the modern currency, and so like dragons, they hoard this currency and only divvy it out whatever they think is necessary for them to complete their mission and get more of that currency. It's a weird kind of cycle. And it doesn't really get anywhere, especially with agencies who have this rivalry with one another, and they argue back and forth over who's the better person or who's the better agency or who's cooler, and instead of actually getting the mission done and accomplishing it and finding an end game for the whole thing.
Now, Brandon, if you receive intel documenting terrorists, but you look at the screen and think they aren't terrorists, in most cases, would this actually be down to faulty intelligence? Or do you think drone operators are being deliberately misled?
That's kind of another part of the compartmentalized thing. Like, they only give us the information that we need in order to give them the best picture possible and to swing the sword, again, the metaphorical sword. So while we can look at a person and they'll say, follow this person or strike this person, we don't get any more detail than that, really. We can, but the details don't matter, and we're not really sure the sources or anything. Though we are being told that sources come from two places, either signals intelligence, imagery intelligence, or human intelligence, we're not the ones that interact with that information.
How are these extrajudicial killings justified legally? Is it okay to kill someone on suspicion just because you're at war? And can the war on terror be used in an instant or redefine your enemy to keep in those legal parameters?
This is where we get into the grounds of legality versus morality. You know, the Nazis, everything that they did was legal to them. Slavery in the United States, everything was legal. The genocide of Native Americans in my country was legal, right? So where we have to come to the point is, like, where is the moral boundary that we want to draw the line at? And that's something that shouldn't be left to the law. The law is just a framework for us to play in, not a black and white yes or no. And every case is different. I don't think that we should utilize any sort of technology or glorify any technology that is utilized to kill another human being. We still need to see these people as humans, not as demons, because there's a reason why these people are angry and they're hateful. It's not because of anything other than we've created this monster ourselves and we've become the monster that they hate.
Now, in case of civilian deaths as a result of drone strikes, who is held responsible? The drone operator, the commander who gives the order, or the intelligence guys?
Really, no one inside holds each other accountable. If someone screws up, then they just get a slap on the wrist and everything's okay. And that's why you would see in the past when wrong strike happened, someone like Obama or Brennan would blame the operators themselves for things that are gone wrong rather than the intelligence that was given, because the CIA and all these other agencies that are out there, they don't want to take responsibility. They just want to point up fingers at other people and place the blame on others because they're perfect. They don't make mistakes. It's the operators that make mistakes. And that's actually one of the reasons I started speaking out, was because the operators were just soldiers. And while just following orders is not a good excuse to do it, we're not the ones that have ultimate responsibility in this, though we do have responsibility in what we do.
Do you feel more responsible and more traumatized over your experience than, say, soldiers who serve in the artillery? And why is that? I mean, they launch missiles into war zones. They have feelings. What's so different about being a drone operator?
Well, here's where you get into close combat scenarios versus distant killing. And if we really want to take a look at it, violence and sex affect the same part of the human brain in the exact same way. And hand-to-hand combat is as intimate as you could possibly get with someone. But as you increase the distance from long-range assault rifles or small arms fire, and you get into artillery, you cease actually seeing a human target, and you see actual target locations or target buildings, and you forget about the human being that's a part of it. And if we look at something like World War II and the bombing of Dresden, a lot of those guys, they just pushed bombs out of their aircraft and were just hitting targets. But when they saw the devastation that they caused and the human beings that suffered, many of them were institutionalized, and the instances of PTSD amongst those people were severe. And where it comes from a difference between an artillery operator and a drone operator, we see our victims. In fact, when we fire a missile, the missile sonic booms about 1.2 seconds after it comes off the rail, and as the kinetic energy is lost through the missile, the sonic boom hits the target first, so we actually see the reaction of the target before missile strikes. And I think that does something to a human being, and I'm speaking from experience and reflection rather than any sort of higher intelligence. So you can draw your own conclusions in this, but really what it comes down to is seeing how people react in a very human way, knowing that they're about to die, and then killing them from with the finger of God from half a world away is it's a really disturbing feeling. And I would say that trauma is different across the board, where soldiers on the ground, they experience trauma like an earthquake or a volcano erupting, while we experience trauma as a form of erosion of ourself in a very definitive sense. And even though it might be a slower process, it is very effective in degrading who we feel like we should be.
Now, you have said that you were on Islamic State's hit list, as well as the hit list of a right-wing group in the United States. What makes a drone operator a target for extremes at home and abroad?
See, this is the strange thing, is I was told that I was on the ISIS hit list by the FBI and Air Force Office of Special Investigations, and I'm not sure how true that is, because I hope that people who see what I'm doing, I'm trying to build a bridge between us so that we can come to an endgame solution and stop killing one another. And this comes from a guy who did it, who has made very grievous mistakes. And I think that the people back home who hate me, they don't want to see anything other than the fear that they're being told. So they're just a bunch of idiots who want to be idiots. And even though I'm the guy with the experience, and I'm the guy that has done the reflection, and I've done the work in order to get this information out there, they still think that I'm a traitor. Well, I can also say that the left called me a monster, so I'm not getting any praise from any group anywhere except for the people who are actually, doing the reflection and the jobs and trying to come up with a solution for this issue. And I think that people who just want to be violent, they're just going to want to be violent, and they're just stupid. Any idiot can kill another idiot. It takes a better person to stop hurting another person, because that's where love and kindness come in. That's where all these things are supposed to be utilized, is that you give love to someone when they're unlovable. You are kind to someone when they're not kind to you. it's easy to be kind and loving to someone who's kind and loving to you, but it's really takes something special and a lot of effort to give that to people that are not, you don't think are worthy of it.
Do you feel that this drone war has produced more terrorists than it has killed, actually?
Of course it's produced more terrorists than has killed. Like what, how are, like, okay, a lot of these cultures over there, they're warrior cultures. They face their opponents on the battlefield. I grew up as a wrestler, and I know that in Iran, at least, you know, wrestling is a sacred sport. In fact, it's the world's oldest sport. So there's a sense of honor and accomplishment with being able to face your opponent on the battlefield. And even if you're beaten, there is still a sense of honor. But when we're utilizing a technology that no one can fight back, they're going to have to try to find a way to punish us in the sense that they feel is necessary, even though they're wrong. I don't agree with anything that they're doing, but they're responding in a way that they don't feel like they can respond, and that's the cycle of violence. Violence only begets violence.
You know, right now, a drone is guided by operators, and you were one of them, obviously. But could the technology be fully automated? I mean, do you believe there will be robots that can kill humans?
Of course. When I was in Geneva, actually, I was the only American that showed up to this conference of where they're determining the laws that they're going to create for autonomous warfare. And one of the guys that was a proponent of autonomous warfare says that, you know, robots can kill people better than people can because there's no emotion. And I'm really thinking, as someone who's done it, do we really want thoughtless, unemotional things that are able to just end a human being's life indiscriminately? And that's a question that is for the people. And that is something that we need to be considered, because no matter what technology that we use against someone else, that technology can always be reversed and used against us. And that is the balance of things. That's the cycle.
Now, I understand that you are not against drones as a tool, but you say that their use should be transparent. How can this be possible when you're at war? I mean, keeping information classified may mean thousands of lives saved.
That's one of the things that people are confused about, where we have this possibility of things, but the reality of the situation is that lives are being ended. When someone comes to me and be like, well, think about all the American lives that you've saved. Well, that's an invisible number. That's imaginary. You know, if people want concrete, actual fact, I can tell you I have killed 13 people with missile strikes, and there are 1,626 unnamed enemies that were killed in all the missions that I completed, and I know that. I know that for a fact, and I know each of these persons was a human being. They had a family, they had friends, they had lives, and we ended them. The possibilities are endless when you come to the reality of things. And I'm not going to rely on a possibility when the actual evident truth of these technologies being abused is sitting right in front of our goddamn faces.
Oh, wow, Brendan. Thanks for this amazing interview. Truly amazing interview. I wish you all the best with all your future endeavors. We were talking to Brendan Bryant, who used to fly drones for the U.S. Air Force, discussing the rising use of drones by the U.S. military and the dangerous implications of long-distance warfare. That's it for this edition of Sophie & Co. I'll see you next time.